Motorcycle fans, brace yourselves. Some of your favorite brands may not make it through 2025. From financial struggles to shifting market trends, the road ahead looks rough for a few once iconic names. In this video, we're revealing 5 motorcycle brands that are dangerously close to shutting down for good, starting with the legendary Harley Davidson. Here's a typical video showing what a Harley Davidson bike is capable of doing. So, what is happening? For over a century, Harley Davidson has stood as a symbol of American freedom, raw power, and the open road. With its unmistakable rumble and rebellious spirit, the brand became more than just a motorcycle. It became a lifestyle. From classic cruisers like the Fat Boy and the Road King to the sleek touring Electra Glide, Harley earned a passionate fan base that treated their bikes like family. These machines weren't just built for transport, they were born to roar. But times have changed, and now, so has Harley's reality. Meet Livewire. In an effort to modernize, Harley Davidson spun off Livewire, its electric motorcycle division. The move was bold. Electric vehicles are the future, after all, and Harley didn't want to be left behind. But the results? Far from electrifying. Livewire launched its flagship model, the Livewire 1, with high hopes. Yet in 2023, the company sold 0 units of that model. Yes, you heard that right. 0. The entire division only managed to sell 660 motorcycles in 2023, a small bump from the 597 units sold in 2022. For a brand with Harley's reputation, these numbers are devastating. And the financials, even rougher. Livewire lost $85 million in 2022, with losses climbing to $125 million in 2023. Despite continuous efforts and new models in development, Harley Davidson's EV venture seems stuck in neutral. What's worse? Livewire isn't making much money even when it does sell something. In one quarter, the company reported $3.2 million in sales from children's balance bikes. Yes, balance bikes, while its 99 electric motorcycle sales brought in just $1.2 million. Harley Davidson itself isn't faring much better. On May 1, 2025, the company reported that global retail motorcycle sales were down 21% year over year. The cause? A mix of economic uncertainty, high inflation, and an unstable global tariff landscape. As a result, Harley withdrew its full-year financial outlook, choosing instead to focus on short-term survival. Revenue from the Harley-Davidson Motor Company fell by 27%, driven largely by a planned reduction in shipments. But even the plan couldn't soften the blow. Demand is fading, and the entire business model is under pressure. Jochen Seitz, Harley-Davidson's chairman and CEO, acknowledged the downturn, but tried to stay optimistic. He pointed to stronger-than-expected performance in select areas and renewed marketing pushes heading into the 2025 riding season. But the numbers paint a tougher picture. Motorcycle shipments were down 33% globally in the first quarter alone. Parts and accessories revenue fell 14%, while apparel sales dropped 11%, both blamed on lower foot traffic at dealerships. Harley's operating expenses are being slashed. Dealer inventories are being reduced, and supply chain issues are still very much in play. Despite all the cost-cutting and strategy shifts, Harley Davidson is in a dangerous position. The brand is bleeding money through its Livewire division while struggling to hold on to its core market in an aging and economically stressed rider base. And while Harley's legacy remains unmatched in the motorcycle world, its future is more uncertain than ever. Now let's talk about Fuel, a brand that was supposed to be the future of two-wheel transportation. Fuel came into the spotlight with the kind of street innovation that startups dream of. It was co-founded by none other than Eric Buell, the man behind Buell Motorcycles and a respected figure in motorcycle innovation. The idea? to revolutionize urban mobility with lightweight, high-performance electric bikes and motorcycles that blended style, practicality, and sustainability. Fuel kicked things off with the Fluid One, a slick electric bicycle that actually made it to customers. It had torque, range, and futuristic design, and it proved the company had real engineering chops. Excitement built for what was coming next. That next was supposed to be the Fluid 2 and Fluid 3, followed by Fuel's big swing, an electric motorcycle called the Flow. Designed by Eric Buell himself, the Flow was positioned as the game changer, a high-performance electric motorcycle that could take on city streets with speed, agility, and cutting-edge tech. Investors and customers believed in the dream. Fuel raised over $1.5 million through crowdfunding. It was a huge vote of confidence for a relatively small company. But behind the scenes, trouble was brewing. By October 17, 2024, everything had unraveled. Fuel filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, meaning the company wasn't restructuring, it was shutting down. A trustee was assigned to liquidate all assets, and creditors were left scrambling. The company admitted it no longer had funds to pay workers, finish production, or deliver the promised bikes. Even though Fuel had most of the parts needed to build the pre-ordered bikes, it couldn't afford the labor to assemble and ship them. Customers were left empty-handed, and equity holders lost everything. The bankruptcy notice was brutally honest. Management explained that Chapter 7 was the only way to unlock value from Fuel's remaining assets. There was some faint hope that an outside party might buy up the equipment and designs to restart the operation. But that's a long shot. And what about refunds? There's no one left at the company to answer customer calls or issue repayments. Creditors must now chase compensation through bankruptcy court, hoping for scraps after the secured claims are handled. The fall of Fuel is especially heartbreaking because it represented more than just another startup. It was Eric Buell's dream, a clean energy, forward-thinking vision of what the motorcycle world could become. And unlike many vaporware electric startups, Fuel actually had working prototypes and finished products. But vision alone wasn't enough. The company overreached, underestimated the costs, and couldn't scale. And now, it's gone. Not a pivot, not a delay. Gone. The next brand to watch out for is At one point, Energica wasn't just another electric motorcycle manufacturer. It was the name people brought up when talking about high-performance electric bikes. If Harley Davidson and Fuel were stumbling through electrification, Energica looked like it knew what it was doing. The Italian brand wasn't a crowdfunding hopeful or a startup clinging to hype. It was a full-fledged manufacturer backed by serious engineering, real investors, and a growing lineup of motorcycles that actually delivered on their performance claims. Founded in 2014, Energica carved out a space for itself by going all in on what many companies were avoiding: long-range touring. Its bikes weren't trying to be stripped-down city commuters. They were built to handle open highways, hairpin turns, and even full cross-country rides. Take the Energica Xperia, for example. This was not your typical electric two-wheeler. It came with a massive 19.6 kilowatt-hour battery, big enough to give it around 261 miles of range in city riding, and about 130 miles on the highway. To put that into perspective, that's double or even triple what many other electric motorcycles could offer at the time. It also featured DC fast charging capabilities, meaning you could be back on the road in less than an hour. That level of range and performance came at a price, though. The Xperia started at $23,250, and that was before adding any extras. While traditional motorcycle buyers might balk at the cost, it was actually a fair deal considering the tech under the hood. The problem? The target market for premium electric motorcycles is still razor thin, and convincing die-hard gas riders to make the switch proved to be harder than expected. Energica didn't stop at just one model either. Over the years, it rolled out an entire range, including the Ego, a full-on sport bike that participated in Moto E, the Eva Rebelle, a naked street fighter with serious power, and the SES 9, a retro-inspired cruiser with electric guts. The performance numbers were impressive. Some models pushed over 100 kilowatt and delivered more than 200 nanometers of torque, putting them in superbike territory. Despite the accolades, track records, and futuristic specs, Energica couldn't defy the weight of economic reality forever. The writing started appearing on the wall when the company began making deep cuts to its workforce. At one point, Energica slashed 70% of its employees in a last-ditch attempt to keep the company running. Then came the final blow. On October 15th, Cycle News reported that Energica had officially given up the fight and was heading into judicial liquidation, Italy's equivalent of bankruptcy. According to the company, the leadership had been scrambling behind the scenes to find new investors. They reached out to stakeholders, financiers, and potential partners, hoping someone would step in and help Energica stay afloat. But even that effort collapsed in the final hours. The official statement from Energica was straightforward and brutal. Despite the efforts from the management in actively and extensively pursuing a search for new investors, it has become clear in the last few hours that these alternative options are no more viable. Once the realization hit that no white knight was coming to save them, the team had no choice but to file for liquidation. What makes the Energica story especially hard to watch is that they had the goods. The bikes were real, the specs were honest. The company didn't promise $5,000 bikes and then deliver something completely different. Instead, it built a premium product for serious riders, and still, it wasn't enough. In a world where charging infrastructure is still catching up, where electric motorcycles are often compared unfairly to their gas-powered cousins, and where price tags can make or break a brand, Energica found itself stuck in the middle, too advanced for the mainstream, too expensive for mass appeal. The next brand on our list is Sondors. If Energica was the electric motorcycle equivalent of Tesla, Sondors tried to be the industry's Xiaomi, flashy, affordable, and aimed at the masses. The pitch was simple: build an electric motorcycle that's highway-capable, futuristic-looking, and best of all, priced at just $5,000. Here comes the Sondors Metacycle. On paper, it looked like the kind of disruptive innovation the market was hungry for. The bike had a sleek, minimalist design, an exposed aluminum frame, and the kind of futuristic appeal you'd expect from a sci-fi movie prop. At $5,000, it sounded like a steal, and that's exactly what got so many people to pay up front. The buzz around the Metacycle exploded. Pre-orders rolled in. Customers were eager to join the electric revolution without blowing their savings. But this fairy tale started cracking early on. As development progressed, the final specs of the Metacycle began drifting far from what was originally promised. Instead of delivering on the 80 mph top speed and 80-mile range touted in its press releases, the actual performance figures were underwhelming. Some buyers reported real-world ranges as low as 40 miles. The top speed, also not quite as advertised. Even worse, the $5,000 price ballooned over time to more than $6,500, and for that, you got a bike that may not have even been street legal. That's not just a rumor. According to Electrek, the Metacycle lacked required compliance certifications in several markets, and there was uncertainty over whether it could even be registered in some US states. And yet, Sondors kept taking pre-orders. The company was founded in 2015 by Storm Sondors, who had previously gained attention with budget e-bikes. At first, things seemed promising, but by the time the Metacycle entered production in late 2022, Sondors was already on shaky ground. Deliveries were delayed. Complaints began piling up. Customers who had paid months or years in advance still hadn't received their bikes. By the end of 2023, it was clear the wheels were falling off. Sondors was in freefall. Then came the bombshell. The company had effectively ceased operations, leaving behind a trail of angry customers, unpaid suppliers, and a warehouse full of undelivered motorcycles. Reports surfaced that thousands of bikes were abandoned in a Chinese factory where they had been manufactured. Electrek reported that the factory in China that had been building the Metacycles was stuck with inventory they couldn't legally sell. Bills had gone unpaid, and suppliers were left holding the bag. It wasn't just customers who got burned. Everyone from logistics companies to overseas manufacturers ended up dealing with the fallout. All told, it's believed that fewer than 2,000 motorcycles were ever actually delivered to customers, many of whom have since discovered that getting replacement parts or even basic support is next to impossible. Without a dealer network, without customer service, and without any ongoing updates from the company, motorcycle owners are essentially on their own. It's one thing to miscalculate the market. It's another to disappear while holding customer money and delivering a subpar product. In the wake of its collapse, Sondors has become a cautionary tale in the EV world. Ambition alone doesn't keep the lights on. What's perhaps most striking is how fast it all unraveled. Sondors only began delivering the motorcycle in late 2022, and by late 2023, the cracks were already impossible to ignore. Just a few months later, in 2024, the company was effectively non-operational. And now, with 2025 in full swing, Sondors is vanishing entirely. A complete shutdown, no remaining staff, no customer service, and no visible path forward. It's astonishing when you consider this was a company with nearly a decade of presence in the electric vehicle world. Yet its flagship electric motorcycle didn't even make it 2 full years in the market. And it's not like people didn't want Sondors to succeed. The motorcycle had style. It looked like something out of a movie, with its sculpted frame and hub motor giving it a distinctly sci-fi aesthetic. But while the bike might have looked like the future, the company couldn't make the business model work in the present. And last but not the least, we have For years, Zero Motorcycles was considered the leader of the electric motorcycle revolution. Originally founded as Electrocross in 2006 by Neil Psyche, a former NASA engineer, began in Santa Cruz, California, with a mission that felt straight out of science fiction: to build high-performance electric motorcycles that produce zero emissions and required minimal maintenance. Back then, electric motorcycles were barely a blip on the industry's radar, but Psyche had a vision and the engineering chops to carve out a space for something radically different. In the early days, Zero focused on lightweight electric dirt bikes, targeting riders who wanted the thrill of off-road adventure without the noise and fuel costs. But as battery technology improved and interest in electrification started gaining traction, Zero set its sights on the street. Over the years, it built out a diverse lineup that tried to meet a range of rider needs, from city commuting to track-ready performance. Among Zero's most recognizable models is the Zero S, a sleek, street-oriented electric bike designed for urban commuting and light highway use. Then came the Zero SRF, which really put the company on the map as a serious contender. It packed serious torque, top speeds of up to 124 miles per hour, and a futuristic aesthetic. Many reviewers compared it favorably to gas-powered sport bikes in terms of performance, making it one of the first electric motorcycles to truly bridge the gap. Zero also leaned into adventure riding with models like the Zero D SRX, a dual sport bike aimed at both paved roads and rugged trails. With long suspension travel, higher ground clearance, and off-road ready features, it gave adventure riders a viable electric alternative, something previously unheard of. The company also launched the FX and FXE, lightweight bikes that were nimble, modular, and perfect for short city hops or weekend play. These models helped establish Zero as one of the only brands that offered a full electric lineup, something no one else in the US really matched. But even with a strong legacy and loyal customer base, cracks in the foundation started to show. Unlike Livewire, Harley Davidson's electric spin-off, Zero doesn't have a heavyweight corporate parent to keep the lights on. Every expansion, every model refresh, and every R&D project depends on rounds of outside investment. And lately, those lifelines have started looking more like warning signs. According to TechCrunch, Zero is currently in the process of closing a new $120 million funding round. That comes on top of another $107 million raised back in 2022, which included investment from Polaris Industries and Hero MotoCorp. But while the funding seems impressive on paper, the fact that it needs this much capital just to keep operations going is raising eyebrows in the industry. Zero says the money will go toward expansion and new product development. But without transparency on actual sales numbers, it's hard to know what kind of return investors are really getting. Speaking of sales, Zero keeps its exact figures close to the chest. However, in 2022, the company claimed it had sold over 20,000 vehicles since its founding. To put that in perspective, that's over 17 years. A number that, while respectable for a niche manufacturer, is not exactly earth-shattering. In 2020 alone, it reportedly sold just 3,500 units, a number that suggests demand has always remained stubbornly flat despite growing public interest in electric vehicles. And that brings us to the latest, and most troubling, development. Despite the PR spin around funding rounds and innovation, industry insiders are beginning to quietly admit that 2025 might be Zero's final lap. Suppliers have reportedly started noticing payment delays. Software updates for older models have slowed down. Even key support teams seem to be shrinking or disappearing entirely. Writers on forums like Electric Motorcycle Forum and Reddit's Electric Vehicles have noted delays in parts shipping and vague answers from customer service about warranty support. Some have speculated that Zero is preparing for a gradual wind down, not a flashy collapse like Sondor's or a dramatic statement like Energica, but a slow fade that leaves customers holding the bag. What's frustrating for many is that Zero was one of the first companies to take electric motorcycles seriously, and for a while, it looked like it had a real shot at surviving long enough to become mainstream. But the rising costs of batteries, the sheer expense of building out a proper service network, and the growing pressure from legacy motorcycle brands entering the electric space, think Honda, Yamaha, and BMW, have all made it harder for an independent like Zero to keep up. Add to that the increasing scrutiny from investors expecting real growth, not just potential, and the writing starting to appear on the wall. The new funding round might buy Zero some time, but unless there's a dramatic shift, either a major partnership or acquisition, 2025 could be the year Zero vanishes entirely. So, here you have it. Motorcycle sales overall are declining, especially in the US. Younger consumers are less likely to own vehicles, let alone commit to motorcycles. Add in rising inflation, unpredictable tariffs, and global economic uncertainty, and you've got a recipe for collapse. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.